Hello, welcome. If you are here for the New Year, New Perspectives live stream event, you are in the right place. As everyone gets logged in, feel free to share where you're located in the chat, and we will be getting started very shortly. We are so excited to get started, so excited to have you here. We've got some great, really exciting conversations planned for you today. If you want to drop in the chat where you're located, where you're tuning in from, we'd love to know. I'm up here in New Hampshire. We got about 12 inches of snow yesterday, so it looks like a winter wonderland outside. All right, we'll get started in just a minute. For those of you just joining, if you're here for the New Year, New Perspectives live stream event, you are in the right place and we're happy to have you here. We've got some New Yorkers. That's wonderful. So my name is Alexandra. I'm on the team here at Balance Eating Disorder Treatment Center, and I'll be hosting this live stream event today. I'm joined by Balance's founder and CEO, Melanie Rogers. We also have Erin and Afoma from Balance staff here today joining us. So welcome, you are tuning in to our New Year, New Perspectives panel discussion, which is a part of our alumni Give Back event. And today, the alumni are at Balance for a whole afternoon of activities, and you're getting a really exciting glimpse into the day. So during the discussion, which we're about to tune into, please feel free to share any thoughts or comments that you have in the chat. And if you have any questions for the panelists, please submit them through the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Mel, Erin, Afoma, and I will make sure that we send your questions over to the panelists, and they will answer as many as they have time for. So without any further delay, I'm going to switch us over to the live stream of the Balance space with Julie Melk, Balance's outreach manager, so that we can get started with our wonderful panelists and on this fantastic afternoon. All right, enjoy.
Today, we're going to be talking about this theme of New Year, New Perspective, what that means in terms of diet culture, anti-diet, what that means in terms of wellness. And I'm going to take a moment just to introduce each panelist. We're very lucky to have them all here today. We have on the end, of course, Jackie Appell, who is Balance alum. Hi, Jackie, welcome.
Hi, Julie.
And we have Courtney Dowdell, creative arts therapist. Welcome, Courtney. We have Shana Spence, registered dietitian, and clinical director of Balance, Beck Liatt. Welcome. I'm going to ask each panelist to go through a little bit of who they are and how they got to be here today. So, Beck, will you start us off with your connection to recovery and anti-diet culture and a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, Julie. My name is Beck Liatt. I'm a licensed master social worker and SIFI. I am clinical director at Balance, and I have been both a client and a clinician at multiple levels of care in the eating disorder treatment world, now in recovery, thankfully. Very excited to be here with all of you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shana Spence. I am a registered dietitian based in New York. My journey in the anti-diet, realm of things was pretty recent, I would say, like maybe 3 to 4 years ago. And so ever since, I became just really passionate about the message. I also work in public health, so really excited to bring sort of a weight inclusive expertise, I will say, to that part of nutrition as well. So really excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Dowdell. I'm a creative arts therapist and a registered drama therapist, as well as a certified eating disorder creative arts therapist. I'm really happy to be here with you. So my background is I started working at Bellevue Hospital, where I worked with severe mental health issues, and then became hi, Lena. I started at Balance in 2016, where I was a drama therapist, and then from there really became really interested in health at every size, intuitive eating, became a case manager at Balance, a lead therapist, and then now I'm in my private practice where I center around anti-diet, health at every size, intuitive eating, especially in the context of therapy and like looking at relational freedom, boundaries. So I'm really excited to be here with you all and share my perspective on this.
Hi, I'm Jackie Appell. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm really excited to be on this panel. This is awesome. So I'm here today because I am a Balance alumni. So I came to Balance for part of my recovery about 2015, 2016. So I went through group therapy and the programs that they have here at Balance. But my broader experience, I've lived about 2.5 decades worth of eating disorders. So I've been through anorexia. I've battled binge eating disorder. I have gone through all of the body image issues that you could think of and the associated social anxiety that comes with it. So I am proud to be on this panel today saying that I am recovered and finally on the other side of all of that. But I know that it very much affects all of us, whether we know it's happening or not. So I'm here to kind of talk about my expertise there.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everyone. Let's start with the subjects at hand, wellness and diet. Of course, new year, new perspective through this lens. That's why you're here today. You all define these terms in your own unique way. Beck, will you start with how do you define wellness? And then in comparison to how you would say our culture defines wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think about wellness, I think about the multiple facets of wellness. I'm not just looking at physical wellness or health, also thinking about relational wellness and health, spiritual wellness and health, financial wellness and health, and mental wellness and health. I think when we witness or are really engaged with wellness culture and diet culture, the focus of health and wellness is really on physical health and wellness. And of course, we don't want to ignore physical health and wellness. That's a valuable thing to want to strive for. But it's not the only facet of wellness, right? And of course, all the facets of wellness dialogue with one another. So when we're thinking about pursuing or incorporating physical health and wellness, the way we do that is going to impact our mental health and wellness, our spiritual health and wellness, relational, et cetera. And I think what we see missing in a lot of the wellness culture that's advertised and sold to us is the impact of that physical health and wellness, or the impact of the pursuit of physical health and wellness onto the other facets of wellness.
Thank you. Courtney, anything to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's great. I'm thinking what Beck said about integration, and how do we integrate these different facets and how do they play upon one another? And I think that part of when we really look at wellness too is really the attunement to ourselves and the internal attunement, like how connected am I to myself in this moment? How connected am I to my environment around me, and kind of looking at that introspective awareness of tuning into yourself and how powerful that can be. And when we think about diet culture, often it's this external force about this is what your body should look like, this is what you should eat. And there's like a hierarchy of like, this is good, this is bad, instead of actually listening to what's happening internally. And so I think that part too of like how the different facets of wellness and how they're integrated, like thinking about emotional health, the soma, the physical health of our body. How are we sleeping? Are we moving our body in ways that are enjoyable? Are we getting enough water? Like the physical components, but then how they interact with how we show up in our world. So I think that part too of just the integration of how they all interplay with ourselves, but then also like interpersonally with ourselves, but interpersonally with our world.
Thank you. Shana, I think that brings, because Courtney brought it up, us to then defining diet culture. what is this term or phrase? It's relatively even new to me, so I can imagine only for our entire audience. We'd love to hear from you what you define as diet culture.
So I have a very long, extended definition of diet culture. So I like to define it as really just an industry. It makes its profits, out of the insecurities that it projects. And, it's an industry that's worth, what is it now, like $72 billion. So I think that oftentimes when we think of diet culture, it's not just like diets itself, but it's also how the media, like what we see in the media, maybe even on television, watching your favorite shows, because as most of us are aware, diet culture also stems from fat phobia, right? And anti-fatness, which stems from anti-Blackness. So there's like all these different sections of diet culture, right? I often think of it as capitalism, because again, I mentioned $72 billion. So it's really just how can we make our money off of these insecurities, right? These unrealistic ideals that none of us, I always say there's no such thing as perfection. I think sometimes with dieting, wellness, now the cool kids say wellness. I think it's always this strive for perfection, and, perfection doesn't exist. Like no one's perfect. So that's why I said I have a long definition of diet culture. I could go on, but that's my definition. It's just an industry that, really capitalizes off of insecurities. So,
and perfectionism being an ever moving target, right?
Exactly.
This is perfect one day, this is perfect the next.
It always changes because it keeps up with the times. I always say like diet culture is now like wellness or like lifestyle. That's another term that's being thrown out there. So I just think it's really important to remember like the industry. Yeah. So that's my long-winded definition. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the audience in just one moment to chime in about diet culture and wellness. But Jackie, what's coming to mind is like dieting being the norm. How it perhaps share with us your lived experience of dieting ever being the norm for you, and then actually stepping back and changing the lens on that.
Absolutely. So many of my first memories in life are being told you're taking up too much space physically, right? Not mentally. I'm not like, I have so many ideas to share. It's no, your body is too large for the space, or that outfit doesn't look good on you. Change it, right? So it was from the earliest stages of my life, the focus was on the being smaller, the restricting, and the paradox of it all is when you say diet, it's just everything that you consume. But diet has now come to mean everything that you restrict to, which is mind-blowing in and of itself. But what you were saying, Shana, the industry is doing it, right? They're doing it very purposefully. So when you have this constant barrage of you need to look this way, you need to be thinner, you need to change your outfit, why are you not losing weight fast enough? Okay, now I have internalized I'm doing something wrong, and until I get to that point, it's not going to be right. I have had to, decades of unlearning that. I have had to relearn how to eat, which is, I remember, 10 years ago, I'd see someone who could just get up and have a snack and then go on. And I was like, what is that like? How do they think about that? Because I've been thinking about my 3 p.m. snack since 8 a.m. So like, how does someone do that? So it's a matter of just like, okay, let me strip out the magazines, the TV, the radio back when it was a thing, the TikTok now, the Instagrams. Like, how do I strip out all of this external stimuli and just say, what is important to me? That, Courtney, you've both mentioned this, the pillars of well-being. Physical, we've been taught, is the pillar, but for me, intellectual well-being is a huge thing. Social well-being is, why has no one told me to focus on those things? So it's really a matter of, okay, let me take a step back. What do I care about? I'm done being told that physical is my worth. Intellectual is also my worth. Social is also my worth. So it's really like rewiring everything to say diet is not my culture.
So powerful, Jackie. Thank you. So before you take a step back and rewire, do you recall a moment where you noticed this was going on for you? Like, so what, was there a very pivotal moment of presence that made you realize this isn't the way it has to be?
Yeah. So I've been in jobs that have been very time consuming, high pressure. Like I've been in banking, I've been in consulting, finance, tech, and it got to a point for me where I was exhausted. There were days where I'd have to sleep at the office because there was no time to go home. And I remember thinking to myself, like 90% of my brain is focused on food, diet, planning, exercise, and 10% is everything else. And that's not just work, it's interests. Like I have friends that I'd like to see, or like, I love playing volleyball. It's like, what are all of these other things? And it got to a point for me where I was like, I'm done with 90% of my head being this. And that was really the pivot. How do I make it so that it's 90% everything else, 10% food?
Incredible. Is that relatable? Any comments or questions that the audience would like to ask the panel? Contributions? All right, we'll come back and I'll check in with the live stream questions as well in just a few moments. So I heard fat phobia come up. Was that you, Shana? Yes. Okay. Tell us about what is fat phobia?
So, and I just want to point out what I've learned about fat phobia are from the fat activists that I follow. I think it's really important to diversify who you're learning from. So, I think many in here are familiar with like health at every size, but I think it's so important to really dive into like the fat activism. And I'm sorry, I'm just using the word fat, it's not to be used as a negative, in a negative way. I just want to point that out also, but fat phobia, it's just everywhere in our society. It's at the doctor's office, right? Many people go in and they're judged on how they look. You go in with like, something's wrong with your ear and you're told to lose weight, right? And it's just like, well, I came in for my earache. What does that have to do with anything? And so it's really unfortunate because a lot of times there's a lot of privilege, even though we don't realize it, in going to the doctor and being taken seriously, and, it's also being able to sit in like maybe a plane, right? Having seats available, having clothes available. There's a lot of fat phobia. And it's just, we tend to think of health as what someone looks like. And it's just not true, and health also shouldn't be something that we should judge someone on, because even if you're not healthy according to what society says is healthy, that doesn't make you less of a person, right? So I tend to think that, even though we say, yes, let's get you to your healthiest self, it's not something we should judge someone on. And we tend to, in this society, we judge everyone on their physical, what they look like physically, which is wrong. So fat phobia, it's everywhere, it's present. It's kind of like the root, I would say, of diet culture, right? Because diet culture is just getting everyone to their thinnest, and it doesn't matter how. So yeah, that was another long-winded definition.
That's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Huge topics to pull apart and unpack. And thank you. I would love to hear from you, Beck, on, I think this ties into it, body positivity, body neutrality. What are those two? How do they differ? What do you subscribe to?
So we hear a couple different terms, body positivity being everyone wants to be body positive, be involved in the body positive movement. body positivity in this kind of setting or framework being like, I love my body all the time. I'm feeling it. I love what it does for me. I love how it looks. Everything about it is good with me, right? While I would love for everyone to feel and engage with and embody body positivity all the time, it's not necessarily realistic to feel wonderful and positive about your body 24/7 in a society that is so anti-fat, right? And is so focused on marginalizing fat bodies and mid-sized bodies that aren't small, right? And so there are other frameworks like body neutrality that says essentially like, you know what, I might have bad body image days, and I'm not going to let the bad body image affect my eating patterns, affect my behavior, affect the way I relate to people, affect my functioning out in the world, right? And so body neutrality often feels to me, and I think to some people that I work with clinically, as more accessible, more realistic than body positivity, because it acknowledges that there are going to be bad body image days, and that's okay. That's I would say even normal in this society, right? The other phrase I want to bring into the space is body liberation, meaning that my body image and my body size, et cetera, how I present in the world should not impact my rights, the way people treat me, the way doctors treat me, how seriously I'm taken, right? And so I think body positivity, body neutrality, all of which have roots in, like Shana said, fat activism, particularly fat activists of color from the 60s that I want to point out and spotlight, I think fall under the umbrella of body liberation. And I think that's an important framework to be discussing as well.
Yeah. Jackie, did you want to contribute to body positivity, body neutrality, your relationship there?
I wholeheartedly agree with what Beck was saying. Like, there are days where I'm just like, I don't want to curse. Sorry, I look great today. And there are days where I'm like, this does not fit the way I remember it fitting. And both of those I have learned to accept. Like, there is not like a good month where I'm like, every day I'm like killing it. But what I come back to is what is my body's purpose? Does it matter if I'm looking a little bit different in my outfit, or I love playing volleyball? Does it matter that I can get the ball on the court? Because the first one doesn't matter. The second one that I care about, is my body going to allow me to do that? Okay, yes, then I don't care if I fit in the shirt the same way, because now I'm going to feel awesome if I got the ball on the court. So it really is like putting it into perspective. It's never going to be 100% I love my body. Is my body doing for me what I needed to do?
That was my next question. Was, so what do you do? How do you relate on those days where you're not feeling great about your own body image? Yeah.
Bringing it back to my worth is not my image. My worth is not my appearance. I'm very proud of the career that I have. And so there are days where I'm like, yeah, I wake up and I don't like the way that my shirt is feeling, but I killed it at a meeting at work. And that's what I'm focusing on. I'm not focusing on, because like that type of mentality is what kept me in the eating disorder. If a shirt didn't fit, the whole day was done. But now I'm able to realize, okay, a shirt may not fit the way it needs to fit, but I am worth so much more than the shirt or the body that puts that shirt on. It's my ability to interact with other people, bring value to my job, like all of these things together.
Audience, any feedback or contributions? Can you relate? Yeah. Any questions on body liberation, fat phobia?
I actually, one more comment, if it's okay.
Of course.
You, the panelists had mentioned this, like you going for an earache and the doctor says like you need to lose weight. In my experience with recovery, so I had been to dozens, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, dietitians, nutritionists, health coaches. There were times where, and maybe I didn't realize it as much in the moment, but there were times where I'd go to a nutritionist who was in the throes of an eating disorder more deeply than I was. And so, yes, you go in sometimes and you're like, how could this doctor say something to me? And then you're like, oh, they've been living in the same society that I live in. So of course they're going to say that because they're in it too. So it's like, sometimes it's like taking a step back and being like, they can't see it yet. Oh, sorry, am I not in? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would love to go with that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's such processes that happen that are seen and unseen. And I think it's important to name it. As I'm kind of reflecting and being here on this panel, as a clinician who is a white, thin clinician, and how I have to be aware, right? And I have to be insightful about looking at that, of understanding how I benefit from the culture. And then thinking about recognizing that gap, like recognizing what can I do in there? And then how do I stay open and stay curious? And I think what Shana said before, right? Of like making sure that you name the work of other people that are doing this work. And then right here, yes, I'm here on this panel and my vehicle voice it, like this is a vehicle for this voice, but recognizing all the work of other people who I have learned from so that I'm here. But I think it's important to name. And I think it's so important because this is when we think about fat phobia and social cultural impacts about patriarchy, capitalism, misogyny, and all of these different pieces, fat phobia, they're all interconnected. And the more that we take a look and understand and break apart and say, this is a culture, there are so many lies about diet culture, and we have all in this room been sold those lies. And then are you willing to take a look about how you also benefit from those lies? And then how other people do not. And then are you willing to take your voice and say what you need to say to be able to, and then put yourself out there and take risks to do that. And so I think that's important to name. So thank you for talking about that even as clinicians, I'm a human being and I live in this culture. So how do we question it and how do we take it down? And I'm passionate to do that. I'm willing to do what I need to do, but I also recognize my privilege in that.
You don't have to ask.
Okay. So I think it's also important to think about, my gender studies degree is going to show, but epistemological advantage here, right? And thinking about like, where is knowledge even coming from? Who is funding studies that doctors are learning from? Thinking about like the diet industry funding studies for doctors is terrifying, right? Because the diet industry, be it like diet pill companies, whatever it may be, has stock in doctors having a certain kind of knowledge, or any kind of professional, right? Having a certain kind of knowledge so that they can sell things to patients. And not all doctors, not all providers, of course. And I think that's important to acknowledge, think about when having these discussions.
So we're poking at our society's disordered value system is what I'm hearing. Okay. So now that we've identified that, I'd love Courtney to go back to you and talk about what is genuine health. And to add to that, in fact, I want to hear from each of you on this, but Courtney, will you start? How do you personally pursue genuine health? How do you guide others to pursue genuine health?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think going back to the first question that we talked about of like, what does that look like in terms of the different domains that Beck was talking about? Like what is health and how do we define it? And I think when I think about kind of being in practice and working with people, it's really about who's in the room with you and what does health mean to that individual? And what the way I like to look at it is like, Brene Brown talks a lot about value mapping, you know, and talking about what are your own values. And so you get to know yourself more. You know, the way I want to look at that and reframe it is, what is health mapping for you? Like, what does that actually mean? And what does that actually look like to you? And who's in the room? And so through that, what I see as genuine health is being able to live and be yourself and how I can help guide you, bring you back to you when in a society, and to validate how challenging it is at times to live in a society that wants to bring you away from yourself. And so I think that's the power of having a space, like a therapy space, where there is everything can be talked about. There is not, it's a non-judgmental space where you can bring all parts of yourself to it so that you get to know more of yourself. And then hopefully you can then bridge it out and feel that freedom and peace and bravery to be yourself outside of that room. And I think that part of like building that neural circuitry of like getting to know yourself more, and then being able to bridge it outside of yourself with other people, that to me is genuine health. But then thinking and validating how challenging that can be living in a society that wants to bring you away from who you are.
I think health, and I mentioned this before, I think that it doesn't equate to someone's moral value, because we tend to really uplift folks who, you know, are what we think are healthy. And let's be honest, most of the time it's just by their physical appearance, right? But I also always say health is individual, health is subjective. I think we listed a whole bunch of isms, right, in this that are happening, not just in this country, like all over the world. And I just came to terms with this recently myself. Not everyone is going to be the healthy version of what we think of in society, because of all those isms, right? You know, we mentioned like patriarchy, capitalism, that's that sort of thing. There's systematic things that are, or I guess, barriers for folks to achieve health. So that's why I always say it's not really someone, and it should never be someone's moral value, because not everyone can live up to that. And, you know, myself working in public health, you know, and seeing so many barriers, whether it's, you know, literacy from folks who just, you know, came to this country. So there's a language barrier, education, right? There's like, you know, systemic racism, definitely. Already mentioned capitalism, patriarchy. So, you know, we can't always achieve the level that we uplift in society. And, you know, I think it's so important to really just recognize that. So, you know, when I think of health, I think of, with all of those things in place, how can you, like for your day-to-day, how can you improve your day-to-day? You know, it might not be, you know, getting in that, what's the recommendation, like 30-minute exercise per day? I don't know. They always change it, whatever it is, you know, because some places, you know, not everyone has access to a gym. Not everyone likes going to the gym. There aren't always safe green spaces for people to just take a stroll, you know? So I think that what's your level? Like, what can you do individually? And it's not going to look like what everyone else is doing. And that's okay. I think we need to also come to terms with that. Like, it's okay. Because I always say there's also healthism in this country. And I can't think of the guy that defined that term, but it's basically, we tend to think that health is up to the individual, and we put the onus on the individual. And I think now we're starting to, you know, talk more about the barriers in place, social determinants of health, huge factor. So health is individual, health is subjective, and those are the reasons why. Yeah.
I want to stay with them.
Oh, of course, sorry.
Just going to do it the whole time. I want to stay with that because you brought up capitalism, and we've had a few questions from home. Jackie, I'm going to get to you in your definition of genuine health. A couple of the questions from home are more like mechanisms and tools. So I want to save that till the further part of this conversation. But one of the questions, Shauna, how do you respond when capitalists hijack maybe these terms or the movement for their own pursuit of what capitalism is for, right? Monetary.
Call them out. I mean,
Period.
I say that jokingly, but I'm kind of serious. No, because I think a lot of language now is just being co-opted. Like, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with intuitive eating, or maybe you've heard of intuitive eating, but even that is being like co-opted by like, I can't even think. I think there's like intuitive sleeping for your like, wellness, and all it is like more diet. So, which is more money to be made. And it's it's so important to really, that's why, promoting this message is really important. That's why we're all here, to really recognize that it's really just getting to that, like that like body ideal that no one has, right? I mentioned perfectionism already, like perfection doesn't exist. So it's really important to recognize, I think, when things are being co-opted, from a capitalist standpoint, from, the language standpoint, I think it's super important. So yeah, I was joking, but I was kind of serious, like calling them out.
Yeah. We're going to get to that later too, about calling out. Jackie, genuine health. Thank you, Shauna.
A lot of what the panelists have mentioned here. I think going back to the concept of there being all of these pillars of health, and how you define it is what's important. I think there's kind of two ways that I look at this. Internally, me making sure that I'm calibrated to understand what makes sense for me, whether it's at any given point, the social health, the financial health, the mental, emotional health. And then I need to make sure that my exogenous factors are controlled for, right? Because it's not just internal. If everyone else is still talking about, I'm only eating a carrot a day, it's going to hit me at some point, right? I live in this society. So for me, what I found health also means is similar to what you said, Shauna, shutting down the conversation. Like, look, if I'm in a conversation with someone and they're commenting on someone else's body, there may be times where I just walk away. There may be times where I say something. There may be times where I sit there and I ignore it. Are some of these rude? Probably. But are they helping my health and well-being? 100% of the time, right? And so I think it's recognizing. I mean, COVID is a really good example where, I mean, how often were we told during COVID, if you're not losing 100 pounds by the end of COVID and you're the strongest person on the earth, you've done nothing. It's like, hi, I'm just here trying to live. Like, I want to get through COVID. I'm trying to keep my job. And now I have to be an extreme bodybuilder by the time I get out. Like, so it's shutting down those and realizing, like, look, that's not for me. That makes sense for some people. Some people, that is their well-being, but it wasn't for me at the time. So I need to turn off that stimuli.
I think that what you say about these conversations, right? Like, so how often are we just got out of holidays, and in so many conversations that turn to aesthetic, right? Like what someone's wearing, what their shape is, so surfacey. And what you said, Jackie, to me are these small radical acts that we can do to be the counter to that might make someone think at some point, like, I wonder if I just said something offensive, right? Just by not responding, by walking away. I think a lot of people, of course, are always looking for mechanism, like, what can I employ? What can I do? So I want to point out that you just gave us one really cool tool. Anyone else in the audience have tools or mechanisms that they employ when the conversation turns to what someone looks like or what they're eating or what you're eating? Anything come up recently over the holidays? Unwanted commentary. Okay. Anyone here want to chip in with that? I have lots of other questions. So Jackie brought us to something that she employs to take us in an opposite direction. Courtney, you've talked about this some, but when you're working with individuals, how do you keep prioritizing redefining wellness?
So can you tell me more about that question? Meaning
Yeah.
like
So how do you keep it a central component of the work that you do in terms of, you know, in my simplistic terms, I think like people not keeping perspective, right? So how do you, what do you do in your work that brings people to an awakening or a different perspective of wellness?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So I think it's important to name what has been learned, you know, what has been learned through our culture, and then thinking about it in terms of the way I like to look at is the neural pathways in our brain. That there are these learned experiences that have been grooved, and over time that they have been connected, so that when we start to kind of go down them, like that we just like kind of go on that route. It's sort of like this unconscious experience, like we're just kind of keep going. So the first part is that knowing to validate that it's really hard when you're wanting to change and find new perspectives and really begin to learn and create a new neural pathway, that to first validate that this is hard. And it's going to take repetition and consistency to really rewire sort of the brain in that way. But then also learning new perspectives takes, right? When we think about the brain, when we're not fed and when we're not nourished, the two things like learning goes to the wayside and also moving. And so when we think about ways in which we want to create these new neural pathways, we need to make sure that we are well fed and well nourished, meaning you're having your meals, your snacks, your dinners, like all the different parts, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and having a component of the fat, carbohydrate, and protein, right? So that we are satiated and nourished. So that's one component of it. But then the second component is then relearning how to challenge diet culture and the eating disorder thoughts, while then accessing these new ways of thinking and continuing on to talk about, you know, how do I put it? That you are enough, you are worthy, you belong, even if you find places where you feel like you don't belong, find places where you do. And I think that's the piece of like challenging diet culture, but then thinking about ways in which to create environments that are accepting of you and finding these pockets of people who understand you. And through that, by finding these supports, then you are also then rerouting and creating these new neural pathways because you're being supported in it as well. And then continuous check-ins, right? So having people who you can check in, who support you as you challenge and do this degrooving work, and through repetition and consistency, building those new neural pathways so that they're available to you and more accessible.
That was a beautiful description. Go ahead, Jackie.
Awesome. And just to add to that, you had mentioned, which has been skipped over, not in this panel, but just like in general, the difficulty in rewiring. And part of that difficulty that I've found, and I'm certain every other person with eating disorders has found, when you are wired a certain way, when you've learned to eat, think, act a certain way, and then you're faced with this change, there is a large part of you that's like, well, this has been working. So like, do I really need to change? Because there are parts of an eating disorder that are great in an eating disorder mind, that are great, that are euphoric, that keep you in it. So part of that difficulty of rewiring is like, do I have enough of a goal to get out of it to then say, okay, you know what, there's actually a side that's better than the euphoria that I think I'm getting right now.
Yeah, I can really relate. This actually goes right into a question we have from the live stream audience, which is someone asked, I'm on the journey to how thinking actually, how do I think about intuitive eating? Right, so recognize when you're in diet eloquently overlay diet culture thinking, disordered thinking, and then as Jackie's saying, but a greater goal on the other side. And so when do you know that's really shifting? Is there any promise of freedom from the diet culture? Yeah. I don't know who wants to take it, Shana or Jackie.
Yeah. Well, I will say, intuitive eating, I think sometimes it just gets confused with, eating whatever, whenever. And from my understanding, I'm not a certified intuitive eating counselor, but I do like the principles because I think it's so interesting. In public health, I work with kids, particularly preschoolers, and there's this natural intuitiveness with children. And it's so interesting that how it gets lost over time, whether it's from family, the clean your plate club, or, diet culture telling us not to eat, or, maybe there's just generational trauma, et cetera, all that stuff. But I think intuitive eating sometimes can sound scary to folks because we come from diet culture where there are rules, right? It's like you're going to eat between, I don't know, like 12 and 8, right? And it's just like, okay, but like, what if I'm up until 11 and I'm hungry, but those are the rules, you're not allowed to eat, right? Or like, with the calorie counting, all that stuff. And so intuitive eating, where it's like, no, it's okay to like honor your hunger. It's okay to like, respect your body and move in ways that work for your body. That's very scary. And many people have problems with that because they're used to following the rules, and it sounds so scary to kind of let go, and myself included, like I had my own bouts with like disordered eating, orthorexia, all that stuff. And, just letting go but you're just like, well, what happens if I don't follow the rules? And so there is like hope, I think, but I think the hurdle is really just letting go and really trusting yourself again, because, that's why diet culture is running so rampant, because we're told, no, that's not what you should be doing. Oh, you're hungry at 7 o'clock. Well, you should have finished eating at 6. Like, we're learning like not to trust ourselves. So I think it's scary to say, no, like honor your body, your body. So yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
selling structure in a way.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm going to shift gears for a moment. Beck, we have a live stream question that I'd like you to address. What about when the cultural inequities intercept with health concerns about being overweight, in quotes? How do we balance that conflict?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think what I really want to emphasize is that there is no disease or physical health concern that a fat person can get that a thin person cannot get, right? And thinness does not protect you from disease, whatever. And so what I would suggest, or what I would encourage everyone really to do, especially folks in recovery, is to find a doctor that does practice health at every size or believe in health at every size. And so the focus of treatment is on the roots of the health concern, right? And if weight shifts in pursuit of correcting or course correcting that health concern, okay, that's fine. But that's not going to be, the doctor isn't going to moralize that weight or focus on that weight shift, right? In any weight shift in any direction. And they're really going to be focusing on the symptoms that are showing up for you in the health concern. And we want a doctor or provider really of any kind that focuses on health promoting behaviors, and weight is not a behavior, right? Weight gets affected potentially by behavior. And so that's, I would say to that, hopefully that roughly answers that question. If anybody else has anything to add, please do.
Jackie, a question from the live stream audience. How, maybe in your own experience, how did you relearn to eat?
Yeah, as I'm hearing this, like the questions about intuitive eating and the rewiring and everything, it is not a switch of, all right, today I'm going to do it. Today I'm going to be intuitive. And from here on out, I'm an intuitive eater. That's what I do. It was painstaking. I would sit across the table from my nutritionist. We would talk about a meal that I was about to eat. We would sit in silence. We would have a conversation about anything but food. And then when we were finished, we check in. How are you feeling? And it was, painful. It was painful. And there would be days where I'd go through that. I'm like, this is awesome. I can do this. And then the next 7 days, intuitive eating, what is that? I've never heard of it in my life. It's not this, you do it and you're in it. And now all of a sudden you're an intuitive eater. There are days where it works. There are days where it doesn't work. And I think having the goal that I had, the 90% versus 10% mindset, that was the thing that got me through. And I think everyone has a different reason to get through an eating disorder, but it's not as easy as just one day it works. What I noticed in my recovery over years is there were times where someone would bring something up to me, like a therapist or nutritionist. Oh, that's amazing that you did that. And I'd be like, what do you mean? You ate whatever the food is. How did it feel? I was like, oh, I didn't even notice it. Oh my God, I didn't even notice it. And I was like, those are the times where you're like, okay, now it's starting to click, but it doesn't just it's not an overnight thing.
I want to stay with that. How do you not get sucked back into dieting?
It is, shutting down everything around you that'll pull you back in. I mean, the comments that'll still get lobbed your way, you have to shut them down because they will derail you. I mean, there are still comments that I hear today where I know how to deal with them, but they still strike a chord, and I still have to tell myself they don't know, or they didn't mean it that way. But you have to create the space for yourself to say, okay, this is my bubble. I'm relearning how to do life. Everyone else back up, and I'll tell you when I'm ready to let you back in. It's the barriers.
Courtney?
Sure. I think, when you're just talking about boundaries, this idea of the metaphor I like to use is like a baseball mitt. It's like I have a baseball mitt and then it comes my way. And then whenever in any boundary, but like if the baseball comes, I kind of take a look at it. And then I think, oh, this baseball's not mine. And I'm going to put it right back where it belongs. And I think that's so important, right? If any these sort of comments come your way of thinking about that there is some protective mechanism that you have your mitt that you're going to catch it with and then throw it back where it belongs. And then depending upon where you are in your recovery, you can throw it back, just throw it back. This is not yours, or you can throw it back with, actually, this is what I do think. And this is where I'm at now. And really educate and give insight, because it's also dependent upon, you are not responsible to do that. That is not your job to do that. That is the job of that other person to educate themselves. But if in that moment that you're willing to give them that gift, and also then what we're looking at that is how do we dismantle diet culture? It's through these radical moments that if we're up for it in that moment to do it, we do it. And that's how I like to kind of look at that of I got my baseball mitt, but then you also got your arm. That's, yeah.
So how do you dismantle it with a loved one? In terms of not so much them throwing you the baseball, but you see them stuck in diet culture, and it's affecting the family.
So that's when we think boundaries, and I think of the triangle with boundaries, validation, and empathy. And how do we create all three together, which is if someone's stuck in recovery and then you're seeing them struggle, how do you validate and say, I see your pain. I see how hard this is for you. And it makes sense why it feels so hard because of the world that we live in. And to see you in this, it's also recognizing when I see someone struggle, what's happening for me in that moment. And how do I feel in that moment that I might not be able to help, but then how do I get them the support that they need, that they need? And I think especially when we see someone who is maybe doesn't quite have their ground in that moment, is so like lost in diet culture or their eating disorder, then it is the responsibility of the loved one to shore them and bring them into getting ground, whether that means, taking them, sitting with them at their first call to get support, having them call to see a therapist, or, take just the intake. Let's just call and get an intake, these sorts of things, just to get someone shored up on so that they can put their feet on the ground in some way, I would say.
Beck.
Yeah. So I'm thinking also about maybe parents or grandparents that aren't necessarily interested in unlearning diet culture, right? And you're like, here are all these other paradigms, and they're like, no, thank you. I think it can be helpful with those folks to this is going to be a very therapist way to word this. So, reword it however feels best, but essentially here's how to love me better, right? Here's you can stay with your paradigm, you can stay with the dieting or whatever you need to stay with for you to feel comfortable. In order for me to continue in this relationship, here's what I need, right? I need the diet comments to stop. I need the body comments to stop. I need whatever it may be, right? I need to not talk about food during meals or whatever it is. And in that way, you're really doing an amazing thing by inviting someone in to know how to care for you better. And in that, maybe they will be open to different, to learning different frameworks or the way in which you are choosing to eat or choosing to relate to food in your body. And maybe they won't, and that's totally okay. It's sad, but okay. And so I think the goal of those interactions is really how can we coexist in this relationship in a way in which everyone feels respected, everyone feels included, and everyone feels valued.
Beautiful. Shana, did you want to contribute to that?
Yeah, everything everyone said, but just to quickly add, I think also it's interesting because whenever we get those unsolicited comments, especially from family members, loved ones who, our family is, we grew up thinking that they're there to care for us and protect us. So some of those comments just feel like, infiltration almost. And, they're unsolicited. And it's hard because when it's family, it's unfortunately coming from a place of love, but it's projecting their own insecurities onto us. Because they, like Jackie said, we are all in this diet culture society together. So it's hard. But I think also it's important to recognize too, sometimes these comments are like a cultural thing. I come from my dad's side of the family is Caribbean, and it's like you are greeted with what you look like. It's just like, why can't we just say hi? Why can't you just ask me how I am? And it's a cultural aspect. And I think, not just mine, I think there are different cultures that do that too, where it's just like, why is this okay? I think sometimes, it's important, like Beck was saying, we need to, these boundaries, are so important, and they're hard because it's family, and it's hard to say stop, to somebody, even if you have to literally say it like that, stop, because, it's not just some troll on the internet, it's family. So I think it's so important to really enforce those boundaries because in the end, it's also your mental health too. So
Yeah, which is part of your wellness.
exactly.
Yeah. So Shauna, I'm going to stay with you to start this one, and then everyone could chime in. What is your favorite tip for people, for you and or people to protect themselves from harmful messaging on social media around diet culture, around wellness?
I think it's so important to really look at your feed, look at who you're following. And I know it's hard because like, I think on like all the social media pages, it's like suggested follows. And it's like, no, I don't want to see this. But I think it's so important to really look at who you're following to see and note how you feel too, like really do a check in with yourself. Is this page really making me feel like, is it giving me some like food for thought, or is it making me feel like I am not good enough? Is it, really making me question my worth? And sometimes we need, and it sounds sort of silly to say, because, there are pages that look so aesthetically pretty and you're just like, you think that it makes you feel well, but sometimes we are doing that like body checking. We're sometimes doing the life checking where it looks like someone's life is so glamorous. How is that making you feel? And I do this myself regularly. And I think it's so important for everybody. And, even if, let's say the page is by someone, and you don't want to like unfollow, mute, and really, because you have to think about yourself again, like mental health, stress places so much harm on the body, so I think it's so important. So that's always my first tip. Just do like really look at who you're following, how you're feeling, like really check in with yourself. So
I just wanted to say that this brings to mind Jackie's 90-10 like filter. So is this putting me in the 90% of my time focusing on my body, my food, my, wellness lifestyle? Or is this putting me in my 10% of creativity, right? My natural state of being. I think that's such an amazing like lens to put on so many things, including the social media. And then, hopefully we can flip it. So one day it's 90% creativity, right? And that 10% of the others. But Jackie, are you on social media?
I do have, I don't use it terribly often, but yeah, I have Instagram and Facebook. It's exactly what Shauna said. Follow the things I want to follow. These are all learned algorithms. So if they see that you're following one thing, they're going to give you more of that thing, and then mute the things that you don't want. And then they'll stop showing you that. Like, you are in control of your feed. You're not in control of the world around you, but you can control what you see when it is on your phone, when it is on your computer, your TV, your, Netflix, whatever it is. So control what you can control.
Yeah. Beck, what has recovery added to your life?
I'm going to piggyback off this 90-10 analogy or framework. I think I am just so much more present in relationships, at work, when I'm engaging with art or creativity. My focus isn't split between, where I'm supposed to be or where I would like my attention to be and food or exercise or whatever I was thinking about before. And so I think because of that, my relationships are more genuine, right? I'm able to be more present. I'm able to offer more. I'm also able to get more out of relationships and achievements and things like that, because I'm spending more energy with them. I'm spending more time with them. I know we have some alum here who have made really wonderful friendships and relationships with each other, and that just makes my heart soar. I think folks who go through recovery can gain really, really beautiful relationships in that process. And so I have folks that I've met throughout my personal recovery process that I will know forever and ever and ever. And I really hope that for everyone who goes through the recovery process as well. Of course.
Yes, please, thank you. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone in recovery?
Ooh, Just one. Okay. I think thinking about intention behind the way you're interacting with food, body, relationships, et cetera, is always important to come back to. I was just talking, I forget where I was talking about this, but you can, maybe two people are eating seemingly identical things, but the intention behind what they're eating can be so different, right? Maybe it's coming from a disordered place. Maybe it's coming from like a genuine joyful place. Same with movement, right? You can exercise for X amount of minutes. The other person can exercise for X amount of minutes, and the intention is going to completely set the tone. And so I think it's my one piece of advice is to really, before you do engage with movement or with behaviors that might have been through a disordered lens in the past, check in with yourself. What am I trying to gain from this? How am I trying to connect with myself in this right now? And I know, like, there are times where I choose to move and I'm like, this is coming from a place of celebration and I'm psyched about this. This is going to bring me joy. And there are times where I think about movement and I'm like, this is not the day for that. This is going to kick up old thoughts, or this is going to bring me closer to values that are not actually my own. And so maybe what was I trying to get from movement? What was my thought behind that? Okay, I was trying to find connection with myself. I was trying to find, maybe an energy boost. Can I get that in a different way? Right. Yeah, it's my one piece of advice right now.
Jackie, what has recovery added to your life? What's your one piece of advice?
What has it added to my life? The way that I think about my eating disorders is that I wasn't living my life. So to me, it's not even that it's just added something to my life being on the other side. It is, I am able to live my life now that I am on the other side. I mean, there are so many things that I realized over my recovery process that I didn't even know I liked. And then once that 90-10 became 70-30, it was like, oh, I like going out to brunch with friends. This is new. It's just, it's not just added. It's like, no, I have a life now. And that to me is, that's the most amazing thing.
That's cool. That's incredible. Courtney, these are some audience questions that we took hold a little bit earlier. I have some friends who are deep into diet culture. Mm-hmm. What can I do to protect my own recovery when I'm around them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, it's interesting. What's coming to mind right now is just sort of, how do I stay in my own lane? There's like that premise of like, how do when I see other people and they're talking about diet culture, what actually, when I tune in, like what feels like the best course of action, And I think the more that we tune into like what's coming up for you, like, for example, for someone, if they're feeling angry, like, I don't know, they might feel angry that because when we think about protection, right, it's like something that I've worked so hard for. And now someone might be coming in and threatening this in this moment in some way. And I wonder, because anger can also be something that's really useful when we're thinking about protection. And it also is a really clarifying tool about what's okay for us and what's not okay. So when we can tune into the physical sensations of anger, maybe I'm feeling a little bit of my jaws clenched and maybe I'm like kind of rubbing my hands a little bit, or what that looks like to you. And then how do you dance with that? That there's literally a book called The Dance of Anger, or Dance with Anger, right? Right. Like, how do you dance with that anger? Like, how do you honor it and acknowledge it? And then what does it actually look like? How do you kind of name it and then talk to the person and to say, I see that you're deep in this. I'm not there anymore. I can't hear this. Either I have to walk away or we have to change the conversation. And, so it's kind of talking about boundaries, but I think tuning in to what that anger is signaling, but that anger can be clarifying, but then also can be at times a mask about these other feelings, which is maybe when other people are talking about this, what else does it bring up for me? Maybe I feel a little bit powerless that this just continues to happen over and over again. And what can I do? And So really honoring yourself, that it's normal to feel protective of what you have worked so hard on, while also honoring yourself in whatever that looks like in the moment.
Yeah. Anger, right? Teaching you so much, and that, your needs are not being met.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that is a deeply stricken value with you.
Yeah.
Right.
So when noticing when we're not aligned, when we're in that place where you learn new values and like what you want, and living in alignment with me would look like this, and then I'm here in this community where it's not, then it's also recognition of like, how do I change this and make this different? Or I might have to find new communities.
Right. That was my next
Yeah.
question. So then or, what is now my relationship going to be?
Well, I think that's where it gets tricky, and it's individual, and there's nuance to it, right? Where it's like, these are people I love.
Sure.
And I'm angry with them. So like, and then that both can be true at the same time. Like you can deeply love and care, and maybe your values are not aligned. And then, but are they willing to hear your perspective out? Are they willing to say, I don't get this, but I'm going to do my best, and I might make mistakes because I am human, but I'm going to try my best to be open and curious about what you're saying right now. And that would be someone I'm willing to spend more time with.
Yeah.
But if they're not, then you have another question for yourself of what to do there. And there's no one can tell you what to do in that moment. That is a deeply individual thing about your own recovery, about your own feeling in that moment.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Yeah.
think that paints a very relatable picture for all of us on many topics, probably. Shana, this one I'd love to get ideas for getting over fears of seeing yourself in photos or videos. So you can participate in social activities and culture.
Yeah, that's always hard. And I always, it's easier said than done, right? Like I always feel like when I give this type of advice, I know it's hard, but sometimes we have to really think when we are looking back, like 30, 40 years from now, which sounds like such a long time. And we want to look at these pictures, like the memories of being with our loved ones. And we want to have those memories. And I can't tell you, even myself, like I think about all the fun memories I've had with like friends over the years, and I have to think about them because I didn't want to be in the pictures. And it makes me sad now because I think about those moments like, oh, I was so warped in this, the diet culture and my own struggles. And, now looking back, now that I'm recovered, it's really sad because it's, now I don't have those. I mean, yes, I can remember them, but, just seeing those photos, and it's easier said than done. So I know, but I always tell people really think about yourself in like 20, 30 years. And I know it sounds like such a long time, but the earth is spinning. So I think that it's, I tell people to really try to look at it from that perspective, because sometimes we focus on the now. And I think what everyone has said so far is that we're all going to have bad body days. Like that's normal. And I think you said that it's normal, and that's not going to go away. But sometimes it's like, I'm here with my friends who are making me feel safe. Like, I know we just talked about boundaries. So, but we do have those friends or family that, make us feel safe, and wanting to really honor those memories. So sometimes it's good to really think, how will I feel years to come with these memories? So yeah.
Distance from it.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who has gone back to eating disorder behaviors after treatment?
So first, I want to encourage folks to not feel shame around engaging in eating disorder behavior post-treatment, during treatment, whatever it may be. We know that eating disorders arise because your brain, your emotional self is really trying to help you and protect you. And it's not doing it in the most effective way, but it is coming from a place of good, right? And so I want to first kind of take the shame off. There's no shame in returning to eating disorder behavior. I would encourage people to think about, why am I returning to this behavior? Why am I, what need am I not fulfilling that is not being met right now outside of my eating disorder? And how can I get that met? How can I get that met with family, with friends, with myself, right? And also thinking about what wasn't so helpful, right? What hasn't been helpful so far? What reframes have I been offered that maybe haven't resonated? And I really encourage people to come to their therapists, go to their dietitians, and work collaboratively and be like, when you tell me this, it feels really good and this resonates with me. When you tell me that, it doesn't really resonate with me. And so can we think of other frameworks or other wordings or other activities that maybe more align with what I'm looking for and feel more effective to me? But first and foremost, I never want anyone to feel me like when I was working with individual clients and clients would say, I've returned to X, Y, and Z behavior. I never want them to feel like I'm disappointed in them, like I'm angry at them, and more just coming from a place of, how can I help you? What can I do better with you?
A question from the live stream audience. How about if you are the grandparent who needs support? I'm over 65. Who do I lean on? Courtney?
So I have a little more context, like in terms of the grandparents supporting, doing or need
I
support
believe,
themselves.
I think so. That's
Okay.
my understanding.
So the grandparents supporting. Okay. So say that again. Yeah.
So they need support.
Okay. And then are they also supporting someone who's in recovery?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So I'd be curious. So I'm curious about the frame of the question too, about being a grandparent. Got it. Okay. Because I'm like and we think about roles and relationships. I'm like, okay, so who is this person in relationship to, and so maybe that role, I mean, kind of bringing in like my drama therapy here is like that role is important here about being a grandparent. What I'm imagining is like being something coming up about being an elder, about wisdom, and who in that role where maybe I'm the one who is supposed to impart wisdom. How do I get support to get guidance? Like that's sort of the question. Like that's sort of where I'm landing with that question. So I'm going to kind of answer it in that frame. And I think that we all are human and we all need support. And it looks like, how do we just open that up for everyone, that everyone is deserving of support and that we're all human beings. And if you are in need of recovery or if you need support, how do you seek that out? Is asking around, also asking other people who have you trusted in the past? Like, are there providers that you have leaned on? Do they know of someone, and encouraging, like, how do we take away also, I can imagine like the stigma with therapy, which is now becoming so much more accessible and open in sort of this age, but like for someone who might be older, that might be something that's coming up with like, what does that mean about me if I'm seeking out support? And how do we take that away and name it, that it might feel hard, but yet you deserve this, and to get the support that you need, that everyone does. Yeah.
Thank you. I also just want to throw out that there are groups for folks in certain age ranges. There are groups designed for folks under 18, over 50, over 60, right? Like there are resources out there because they're needed. Unfortunately, they're needed, but they are needed. And so I hope folks of who are worried about, maybe I'm the oldest one going into treatment. Maybe I'm the only person of color coming into treatment. Maybe I'm the only queer person coming into treatment. There are groups specifically for most identity factors to come together and create community within recovery. So I just want to throw that out there as well.
I think that's really helpful to know. Thank you. Book recommendations. We'd love to hear from each of you. What books are top of the list? Jackie, we'll start with you on that end.
When I was trying to learn more about my eating disorders, when I first started going to therapists, I was trying to just read everything I could. And I think for me, I got stuck in the first few chapters where it was like, this is the food that I'm eating and this is the weight that I am. And for me, I couldn't get much out of the book because I couldn't think beyond that. And so I actually stopped reading eating disorder books entirely because it would just get me more in that mindset. So I found, like, I love nonfiction, finance, psychology. So like, I mean, I will read an economics textbook like that. So like, I found what worked for me, and it wasn't eating disorder books. So I don't have a specific eating disorder recommendation. It's more just find what book you are interested in.
That's excellent. Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah, I think so there's one book, and there's The Body's Not Apology. That book. There's also a podcast that I think Glennon Doyle just had Sonia on, and then I listened to that. That was great. And I think to expand too, of like, when we think about recovery, but like that it incorporates like all aspects of identity. So thinking about like what interests you. I know for me, The Artist's Way was something like Julia Cameron, like just really tuning into like that book focuses so much on the journey back to you. And so I love that book too. And then for me, it's very dense, but I love The Body Keeps the Score. And it's maybe like a read that like you read, but then you also have an audiobook too, so like you can kind of do both. But I think those three they're really informative.
Yes, I love The Body Is Not an Apology. So that one. Also, I would have to say, like, based on my intro into like this anti-diet world, like Anti-Diet was a book that I first read and I was like, oh my goodness. And that kind of led me into what I'm doing now. So highly recommend. But I think to touch more on like Jackie's point, it really does depend on how things make you feel, right? So maybe it's not any book on these movements, but personally, I always say Anti-Diet. I also think if you are interested, if you're a nerd like me, you like to like see like where things began and, where like diet culture stemmed from. And I know I mentioned this before, like how it stems from like, fat phobia, which stems from like anti-Blackness. So I always say Fearing the Black Body is a really important book because it kind of ties into where this all started with like our unfortunate BMI system and all of these things. So I think that's really important. Another book, I'm just beginning, but I really love it, Hood Feminism, which is also really great, which ties in, it's not really like a nutrition book or anything, which might be helpful for some of you. But that's a really great book as well. So yeah, those are my recommendations.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I will definitely underline Fearing the Black Body for sure. Super informative and interesting. I think anything by, oh my God, it's not, who writes What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat? Is that Aubrey Gordon? Aubrey Gordon, thank you. Anything by Aubrey Gordon is genius. She just came out with another book called You Just Need to Lose Weight and 19 Other Myths About Fat People. Highly suggest that. And then she also, along with a co-host, produces a podcast called Maintenance Phase that I highly, highly suggest. Just each episode debunking a different diet myth or kind of diet fad, things like that I think are really important and interesting.
I love all these, and I think we should put a list down, and especially for live stream as well, type it in if we caught any of those. I have one more question, and I'll start with you, Beck, and then maybe we can just pass it down the other way. As a friend or a family member of a person who has an eating disorder or is in recovery, do we encourage the person to speak with us more about their condition and challenges, or do we avoid discussing the subject? And I would like to add in too, if we do talk about it, how do we bring it up?
I think if possible, I'm always a fan of and simply asking, like, is this helpful for me to talk about with you right now? Can be really informative and empowering for the person in recovery. And it kind of gives them the option to opt in or opt out of the conversation. And it's okay to regularly ask that question, because some people are going to want to talk about it some days and not other days, or certain times of the day are easier, or over meals or never over meals. And it's all going to be really nuanced. And the answer. And so to say something like, hey, this is what I've noticed, I'm concerned, is this the conversation you're open to right now? Is a great way to kind of gauge the person's willingness, readiness to engage in that conversation. And then if the person is not willing to engage in that conversation, but you are genuinely concerned, saying something along the lines of, it's okay if you don't want to talk about it with me. I just want to make sure you have someone you can talk about this with if and when you're ready.
Yes, I agree with everything. And, everything is just so individual and nuanced. It depends on the person. It also depends on the day. But I think it's so important to really just ask, because also sometimes we want to help and we're just like so focused on that we're not thinking of like how our words or actions are impacting others. So it's just like, what do you need from me? What would be helpful in this situation? Maybe it is just talking, or maybe it's doing something that has like nothing to do with, body or eating. But it's really just, it differs. It really depends on the individual, and it's nuanced. I think everything requires nuance. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, direct communication, holding complexity for nuance. And I think also the third, like holding space for that person, holding a non-judgmental space that you can hold it for them, and you don't have to change or fix any of what's happening in the moment. Like you can just be there with them. And then hopefully with time, like building safety in that way, and then bridging that into maybe if they're ready to get that support, and what does that look like, their readiness and willingness, and really meeting someone where they're at.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value in that.
I'll give my personal experience. I agree. It is very personal. I think acknowledging that there is an issue is huge. For me, I would say take the conversation off of food, take it off of food, take it off of appearance. Stop talking about that. It doesn't have to be, do I talk about it now? Do I talk about it 10 minutes? Do I talk about it? Just stop talking about it. If I want to talk about it, I assure you, I will bring it up. I think because I have had eating disorders because everyone was hyper focused on it. If I had grown up thinking, oh, actually my intellect was the important thing about me, or my social circle was an important part of me, it would have taken so much of the focus off of my body. And sorry, I can't curse. I need to look this way today. So I would say in my personal experience, talk about anything else. We will talk about it when we want to talk about it, when we're ready, when it makes sense, when we need that guidance, then be there. That is, to me, that is the best that someone could do. Just be there, but don't go out of your way to be like, hey, you want to talk about food right now? Like, I don't.
Those were all really helpful suggestions and different viewpoints. So thank you for that. It's 2:00. As Shana mentioned, the earth is turning and time goes on. And it's really not easy to bring this conversation to a close. I want to thank all of you for sharing your lived experience, your expertise, your very unique perspectives. I know that personally, this conversation has woken up. And I'm really honored to segue this now. Rogers, the founder of Balance, there's a lady for us here on the wall to talk about the action that is being taken. Yes, Melanie, welcome. Hi.
Hey team. Oh my goodness. I just want to say, my gosh, that panel discussion. I have been here for the whole panel discussion, and I cannot thank you all enough. That was one of the best panel discussions that I've ever sat on and listened to. You guys are all just so eloquent, and I've got friends who've joined us on the live stream from all over, including some friends out in Beirut, Lebanon, and they're listening, and that was just really, really amazing. I took so many notes as well. So a big thank you to you all for joining us today to put that together. So I am really, really excited. But I must apologize. I'm sure Julie already said I have to apologize for not being there in person. I'm really, really disappointed, but I tested positive for COVID. I guess there's a first time for everything. Fortunately, symptoms are pretty minimal, but didn't want to come and contaminate everyone. So hence we're doing this via Zoom. But I am super, super excited after hearing all of that great conversation around diet culture and eating disorders and lived experience. Jackie, your insights were invaluable. Super excited to announce that here at Balance, we've been working on our own movement against diet culture since actually 2018. And in 2018, I don't know if you all are aware, if we can go to the next slide. In 2018, team, Weight Watchers, I'm sure you've all heard of them, the weight loss diet company, announced that they were going to be launching a new program for teens where they were going to be offering free memberships for kids between 13 and 17. Can you believe this? And many of you probably may remember this. So at that time, as professionals in the eating disorder field, myself and our team here, and I'm sure many of you, really saw the harm that could come from teaching teens how to diet. In our world, it's the equivalent of giving cigarettes to kids. So in response to that, we created the hashtag Wake Up Weight Watchers, and we kind of corralled all of our colleagues and friends, and it quickly went viral. A Twitter campaign, it trended worldwide, and it brought a lot of attention to this really, really dangerous teen program, thank goodness. And there was coverage from Teen Vogue and, Cosmopolitan, New York Times, and many, many others. And so that campaign then began the initiative of Redefine Wellness and its actionable mission today. So in line with our values here at Balance, and also what we were hearing today from our panel, that absolutely, Shana, we have to call them out, right? We have to call out the diet industry. But I also think it's important to try to then provide a solution. Like, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to help people to understand not only how dangerous it is, but also what's the alternative then for people who want to take care of themselves, but dieting and yo-yo dieting is absolutely not the answer. So today I'm super, super excited to give you actually a sneak preview, because we're launching this program in March. So this is a real sneak preview of this launch of our new initiative called Redefine Wellness. So Redefine Wellness, what is what is it? It's our actionable solution. It is two things. One, it's a coaching service. And it's also, I'm really excited about this, a certification training program for people to become a coach, a redefined wellness coach. So what our lofty goals are here is that individual by individual, our goal is to dismantle diet and co-opted wellness culture, help people heal their relationship with food in their bodies. And I know this is lofty, but in our own small way, help to try to prevent disordered eating and certainly eating disorders right at the beginning. So as I said, I know that's really lofty, but you've got to start somewhere. I want to show you here is that this initiative is not just about us here at Balance. It involves all of you here today, both all of you who are in person and all of those who are joining us through live streaming. But beyond that, all of the people that we encounter that have reached out to us at Balance or reached out to any health professional who's struggling with, diet culture, yo-yo dieting, disordered eating. It is something that we believe could be helpful to many, many people. So no matter where you are in your journey, you can absolutely be involved. A little bit about the coaching. So the coaching, the way I envision it, it's to help provide people with an alternative to dieting and diet culture. So, because what else is there out there? And I don't know about you all, but when you look at the health and wellness industry, and as you said today, Shana, $70+ billion annually, and that's just in the US of A. Globally, it's around about $120 billion a year is spent on an industry that we know does more harm than good. So, but what else is there out there? And if you look at the coaching services that are out there now, what I find distressing, because we're very research-based in what we do in the eating disorder field, is there's a lot of people out there claiming to be experts, but may have done intermittent fasting, for example, and now they're going to teach you how to be successful with intermittent fasting. So this whole idea of co-opting health and wellness, we want to do away with that. We want to provide a real solid research-based solution. And so we've come up with a 10-step methodology that walks people through what the panel's been talking about today, which is all these other facets and aspects to our lives that make up who we are, that is so far beyond just about food and how much we weigh and body image. So the coaching, it's one-on-one coaching, it's group sessions, but more importantly than that, perhaps, is it's also providing a community where you have other like-minded people that you can soundboard with and help to kind of tune out all of that toxic diet culture that we're surrounded by. A little bit about that 10-step methodology. As I said, I'm really super proud of this, if I may say so, because what we've done with this is we've taken all the research that we know is important in living a well-balanced life, and we've put it all into this practice. So it's super, super, super comprehensive. And I think that's where it's a little bit different to some of the other programs that might be out there that may focus on one aspect. And what we've done here is combined them all into one methodology. So as you may scan through those stages there, of course, we talk about all foods fit, intuitive eating, and of course, body image. But we also talk about core values, not diet values, not diet industry values, but core values. We talk about re-embodiment. Today, we heard about joyful movement that feels really good for you. And boundaries, man, did we hear a lot about that today? So those are some of the things that are all encompassed here in this program. What I'd like to also say is that for many, many of you who've gone through your own journey to recovery, we hear this from so many of our clients over the years, that so many of our clients want to give back. They want to come back, maybe become a therapist, maybe become an RD and work with others and help them to navigate their own journey to recovery. And so I'm just putting this out there as another option for people who would like to get involved and help others through your own lived experience. Becoming a certified redefining wellness coach is one avenue that could provide that for you. So as a career option, or something that just helps you to feel connected, and something that helps you to give back if that's something you're passionate about. And I will say this, that for anyone who's gone through their own lived experience, it gives you a unique lens to help others in a way that honestly no one else really can, because no one else has walked, this pathway. So there you go, team. And for everyone who's listening, as I said, we're super excited. We're launching this in March. I was just so excited to be able to share this with you all today. Just a sneak peek before it goes out there on social and everyone hears about it. And if you'd like to learn more, I'd love to hand you over to my wonderful colleague, Alison. Alison, if you're there, if you want to just raise your hand. I can't see you because the camera's not on you, but I'm assuming you're waving to everyone.
She's waving.
Awesome. Go and have a chat to Alison. Alison has been my co-developer over this last year in putting this program together, and we're just really, really excited. So thank you all again so much for joining us today. Again, my apologies for not being able to be there in person, but this is hopefully the first of many alumni events that we hope to host, and to see you all in person again would just be marvelous. I look forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Melanie. It was so good to hear about that. I know I'm really excited. Thank you all who joined us here in the live stream for stopping by. We're so honored that you chose to spend this time with us, and we hope that you enjoyed this amazing event as much as we did. If you want to continue learning about redefined wellness, diet culture, recovery, eating disorders, or treatment, there are lots of opportunities to get in touch with us. So if you want more information on RW, connect with us through the link we'll be providing in the chat, and there our team will be able to answer any questions you might have. If you're interested in learning about balance, you can also find a link in the chat to reach out for a free consultation there. Also, be sure to keep an eye out for emails where we share lots of exciting information and more free resources. So thanks again for joining us. It's been such a pleasure to have you. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask. And I hope that you have a beautiful weekend and a great day. And with that, I'm going to end this webinar.